contracted companies such as PG&E that affect the already high cost of living?
I am extremely blessed by the fact that my predecessor in the old CD3 had an excellent insurance plan, which I have lifted shamelessly wholesale. Jessica Morse, her plan developed the idea for a state reinsurance agency to backstop the fire insurance that we all rely on in this state, and I think we need to take those measures. The market is failing us right now. Insurance companies and of course PG&E getting to write off as bankruptcies and then just come back every single time. The massive wildfires that devastate our communities is a travesty. Building a green grid is a good step to ensuring that we do not have these catastrophic fires in the future. Building new housing to modern standards is a good step to making sure that people do not experience total loss if a wildfire does come through their community. If you live in California, that's always a possibility. And ensuring that there is a way for the state and for even the federal government, like with federal flood insurance, to step forward and to actually have a robust fire insurance program that everybody can afford. That's the way forward in my mind.
Yeah, it's not working, let's build something new. Let's build a new system that's gonna be affordable for folks and be something that you can really depend on and rely on. It's absolutely unconscionable that you all are worrying about your mortgage and how much you're gonna pay for fire insurance and flood. These are just basic things that are happening because of climate change. And in the federal government, we need to address the climate crisis. We can't just pretend that it's not happening. And that starts with strong policies that are rooted in green jobs and that are also rooted in the ability to build something that is going to make insurance affordable because it's not an option.
So if we can't pay insurance right now, that's going to take a while. So I also think that as a federal government, with the resources of the federal government, we should try to do a reinsurance financing system to help, one, buffer the risk for the insurance companies. Sorry, if they leave the state, it's really hard to hold them accountable for something that's here in California. What we have to do is we have to make sure that the insurance companies are staying. We try to buffer their costs so that they can continue to provide insurance at a reasonable cost. The other thing is we also need to be sure people get credit for the things that they're doing to reduce their own fire risk as well. That doesn't get and in fact, I would just briefly mention the main time. I did this to try to reduce health insurance costs, similar things, health insurance costs here in California. In fact, Covered California for 2 years in a row actually had an average premium increase of less than 1% a year for 2 years in a row because of things that I put in place for that insurance. Thank you.
So we really need to deal with this on a short, mid, and long-term goal in terms of our solutions. Number one, long-term, we do need to deal with climate change. We need to go ahead and extend the tax credits really for whether it's solar power, whether it's turbine. You see the Trump administration cutting back on each and every one of those things and ignoring the science. What did Trump do? He came in and he took out the scientists. He took out the scientists that demonstrated again and again that there is a climate change crisis. So we need to make sure that there's funding there for our scientists to push back, because that's how you end up defunding democracy, and that's exactly what he's doing. Mid and short term, what we need to do is really set a standard across the country. Right now in the insurance industry, we are having a patchwork of regulation in industry. We need to have a single, comprehensive, consistent regulation across the country that is pro-consumer, pro-homeowner, so that you don't see your rates go up by 1,000%. So that, for example, the insurance companies aren't just flying a drone over your house or looking at satellite photos and demand that you fix your roof or they're going to jack up or drop your insurance rate. We need to deal with it.
There is a whole system that needs to happen in order for us to be able to reduce our insurance costs, and also addressing the insurance companies that are fleeing the state and leaving us without opportunities to choose which insurance company that is the lowest cost and reliable. The system, as a climate mayor, that I have learned is making sure that we address all the climate issues that are going to be happening, whether it be flood protection, which is a majority of the area in some of these regions, fire prevention, and also in reinforcing our firefighters and giving them the right equipment to attack a fire, giving them the training with the new climate change issues that are happening here. We see fires that are really out of control very quickly and just spreading very quickly. Those are some of the threats that I see homeowners and people and risking the lives of people. So with that, I'd like to address that. Undergrounding the PG&E, making sure that we can have safer PG&E utilities, and moving forward, funding insurance companies financially. We're not in funding insurance companies, but having a public insurance system, we can help.
All right, our next question, we'll start with you, Lauren. How will you support the military and our surviving spouses and keep military members safe?
Thank you for that question, and thank you for all of you that have served. I think it's clear that we need to honor and respect our veterans, and that starts with not dismantling the VA. Right now, the Trump administration has cut a significant amount of jobs from the VA, and a significant amount of services aren't getting to them. So we need to restore all of the things that Trump is taking away from our veterans. Additionally, we need to think about their health care. My uncle is a veteran in the Navy, and if he wasn't at Walter Reed and didn't have his services, he probably would not be alive today. So healthcare should be easy and accessible for our veterans, and housing, right? There's no reason that veterans should be unhoused, period, full stop. There is transitional housing, but there's not enough resources to get them where they need to be. So we need to cut through the red tape, honor our veterans, and then think about their spouses because they are also serving with us. And finally, we need to really think about these wars, right? Like, I can't imagine having a family member go overseas and not feeling like they can be safe. So we need to think about those families for their sacrifices.
Thank you for the question, and as someone who is a former member of the Public Health Service Commission Corps, I want to thank all our service members and family members who've made sacrifices to defend our country. And you're right, our country owes a lot more to our veterans and our service members as well. And so some of the things that we should be doing, for example, I used to be the vice chair of the Veteran Affairs Committee in the State Assembly, and some of the things that we worked on, one was actually to be sure that, unfortunately, in the case of the servicemen are passing away or being killed in action, that this is for the LGBT community, be sure they can assign who in their family could actually, or who a person that can dispose of their bodies, because that can be a problem. We need to be sure that the family members of people who served in the military, that when that person passes away, that we do not leave the family members stranded, right? So we should be sure they continue to have benefits. Certainly, I'm going to fight to be sure we keep our VA. They're taking apart the VA, and be sure we protect TRICARE as well. So we need to be sure that our service members and our veterans have the health care that they need. Thank you.
So first of all, to all those who serve in our military, past and present, thank you for your service. You know, I was born in a time of war. I was born in Vietnam, and I remember that many of the Americans who served in Vietnam, when they came back home, they weren't given the services they needed. They were spat on. They were yelled at. We need to support our service members across the board. So let's make sure that we fund the VA program. Let's make sure that we have good health care for our veterans. But more than that, let's make sure, for example, that they get the mental health care that they need, especially with PTSD and everything that's going on. And what we see Trump doing now is he's politicizing our military, and that needs to end first and foremost. But when people come back, what we need to do is really work on what I would call workforce housing development for our military, making sure that they have tax credits, making sure that they have the ability to buy a home, right? To buy a first-time home and really develop housing for them, because that's the path towards a brighter future in the American dream, but we need to support our servicemen.
To our veterans and those that are serving now, thank you for your service. As a mayor, I have fought to keep our local VFWs open because they are the lifeline to those that have been in service in foreign wars, but also open those opportunities to increase access to veteran services for those that are returned home and are seeking support. In addition, for my work in legislative advocacy, we have increased the county level veteran services to reduce the caseload. So those that are seeking access to those services at the county level, that they get their record taken care of immediately and not wait. We also need to make sure that we have medical care and housing support and homelessness addressed for those that are out needing services. For their families, we need to make sure that we address their entire family. If there is any condition, any situation that is happening, that we immediately address it, especially at the county and local level.
It was Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, when the first veterans pensions were being officiated, who wrote the words, "For he who shall have borne the battle, and his orphan, and his widow." To care for those people was to be written on the front of the VA. It was recently taken off, actually, by the Trump administration. Gold Star spouses and Gold Star parents bear an extraordinarily high burden, a heavy burden. to give one's own child or one's own spouse in the defense of democracy is no mean thing. I was trained as a CACO while I was in the Marine Corps, a casualty collection officer, the people who do the delivery of the bodies to the homes. There are few things that anyone can say to make it better, but there is always more that, there's always more the federal government can do to ensure that those people who have borne that burden have access to the things that their father earned in the line of duty.
All right, we'll start with you, Richard,
Yes.
for this next question. What will you do to help down-ballot candidates and build a progressive pipeline for future elections?
Thank you for that question, and I'm proud to have actually worked on this very issue when I was in the state Senate. I actually worked with the Pro Tem's campaign team to actually expand our Democratic majority here in California. We got past 2/3 and continued to grow that. I actually was very proud of the fact that I was able to get Dave Min, who's now actually in Congress, into the state legislature, and then he had a very successful run in the state Congress, and being sure we kept a very purple seat in the Democratic side. I also worked with other candidates as well. You know, when I first ran for the state legislature, as I mentioned earlier, I ran in a safe red seat and flipped it, right? So I worked with people and helped other people help flip seats, right? People like Ken Cooley, people like Dave Min, other candidates as well. And I think that I'm going to continue to work because that's how we're going to make things happen, right? It's by getting more Democrats in elected office, including the majority in Congress. Thank you.
So, out of 2,400 elected district attorneys in the country, do you know what percentage are Asian American? Just throw out a number, what percentage? 2%? 1%? 10 people. 10 people out of 2,400. I'm one of those 10 individuals. And so when I became the district attorney of Sacramento County, one of 10 Asians in the country, the first and only Vietnamese American, one of the things I did was I worked with the National Asian Prosecutors Association, and I started a boot camp. I started a leadership training course because we needed to build a bench. And frankly, what we need to do here in Placer County is to build a bench to take back Placer County, period. And when I met with Nick, what I dedicated to him was, I'm willing to come together. Let's do a boot camp. Let's bring in consultants. Let's bring in fundraisers. Let's talk about how we win a race. Because I got to tell you, when I first ran for office 4 years ago, I hadn't even run for anything, not even class secretary. But I learned what it took. And together we can lift each other up because a rising tide lifts all ships.
I have been with the Yolo County Democrat Party serving to make sure that we get Democrats into office. Just recently, we've been able to get a MAGA Republican, anti-LGBT in the school district recalled and out of office and replaced her with a Democrat, a very good Democrat. That is the action that we need to take, is to recall those Republicans every which way we can and to bring in strong Democrats. So my lifelong service also has been starting off at 16 years old, getting people into office, women, Latinas into office, and they've succeeded today. And for moving forward, I've also been on the national delegate for Kamala Harris, trying to win the presidency for us Democrats. But we are going to continue that fight. We are going to win back the House, and I have continued as mayor to help my fellow Democrats win those seats. Not only the investment, but for my time and canvassing, but also financially. Very important, and to also continue to build the bench, to build more Democrats.
We're greatly blessed here in the 6th to have a great slate of Democrats running to represent us in the House right now. Everyone up here has excellent reasons to be running and to be doing what they're doing, and I look forward to supporting whoever the nominee happens to be after the primaries are done. Helping down-ballot candidates is one of the most important things that we can do in higher level office. As many of you likely know, I've cross-endorsed with Neva Parker, who's running to be your 85 delegate. The thing about these endorsements and doing the work is that senior officials in our government, or Democrats who are elected to federal office, have a responsibility to show up for local candidates and to be there and to take the time and to use the resources to ensure that we are at their events and that we're advocating for the causes they care about and that we're working together to pass policies that matter for California, both at the federal and the state level, and making those things work together. The best thing that we can do for other Democrats is to be there and to use our infrastructure to help them, and I look forward to doing that.
I had the pleasure of also serving on the Planned Parenthood Advocates Mar-a-Monte leader, and we endorse over 200 candidates up and down the ballot, from the library board to the water board to the school districts. And in this area, we need to educate and train these folks to be leaders, right? You don't need to necessarily be a career politician to be a leader in your community. You need to show up, have passion, and have the people behind you. That takes money, that takes resources, and that takes education. And I have educated many candidates and working with many Democratic clubs here to do those trainings and to talk about these issues. Because if we don't, Moms for Liberty will continue to try to take over these school boards. They will have Destiny Church members, infringing upon our school boards. So we have to pay attention at the local level. And as a federal leader, I want to be an example, but also collaborate and infuse resources so that we can make sure that our students have a separate church and state, and we have strong candidates that are supported up and down the ballot.
All right, we'll start with you, Tim, for this next question. Is Israel committing genocide in Gaza, and what do you plan to do in that regard?
So first of all, I want to start by saying that I believe in a two-state solution. I believe that the people of Palestine and Gaza deserves to have their independence and ability to go ahead and decide their future. And that future is an important future, one free from oppression, free from violence. And what I will say is this, that what we see in Gaza with the doom and destruction must end. I believe in this two-state solution, but part of that requires that we go ahead and disarm Hamas, that we make sure that Hamas does not play a role in the future of Palestine, that other countries such as Iran right now, who many people are not talking about, which are engaging in genocide. Iran, which is going after and killing 2,500 people in the last few weeks, we make sure that there is democracy across the way. But in that process, I advocate and will continue to advocate for a ceasefire and for a two-state solution with Palestine in which there is no terrorism and no Hamas, and making sure that we move forward on that.
What I also believe here is that we need to have a strong ceasefire, and we need to provide the humanitarian aid to Gaza, given the devastation that has happened there. What I've noticed that Netanyahu has done has been awful. However, I do think we need to have a two-state solution, because given what is happening there, we need to have peace. We need to make sure that both get along, but we also need to protect countries from terrorism and genocide. So we need to do what we can if we provide any kind of arms, that we have accountability and making sure that what that is happening in that country that receives the arms is using it appropriately and not inflicting harm on innocent lives. In working with these countries, what I see happening now, moving forward in the rest of the world, we need to do all we can to preserve the peace and protect innocent lives. Thank you.
Does anybody in this room know the actual legal definition of genocide? Or what the 5 points that qualify as genocide are? Because point number 3 is rendering continued conditions of life impossible. Of course it meets the definition. Even American pro-Israel organizations like J Street acknowledge this meets the conditions of genocide. But the question is, what do we do about that? Israel is one of our closest allies. That's probably not likely to change anytime in the foreseeable future. I've gone on record saying that I support withholding the withholding of offensive weapons until the end of the fighting in Gaza, and to me that means a full pullout of IDF forces from the ground. Now, here's the thing about that. October 7th, yeah, terrible attack, awful thing to happen to the Israeli people. But it's over 2 years ago, and if bombing to get Hamas hasn't gotten them by now, it never will. We have to hold our friends as well as our enemies to the same moral standard we would expect of ourselves. Otherwise, America has no right to talk about how other countries act.
As a mom, I think it's unconscionable that mothers and families are being ripped apart on both sides. I do support a two-state solution, but I also think it's really important that we hold Israel leadership accountable. And if we are going to be giving them investments, that needs to come with direct aid to Gaza so that these families are not in harm's way. It is just important to me also that we recognize that the Palestinian and Israelis need a voice in this. We don't, as Americans, need to impose what we think is right everywhere. We need them to tell us what they need from us. And so I am a leader in which I support the ability to make sure that families are safe, because everyone deserves to be safe. And how we do that is holding those accountable that are doing wrong, and also creating a pathway to aid. No one should be starving, and no mother should have to say goodbye to their child or to their family. And I want to make sure that we're not just saying, hey, we're the U.S. and we know all, because we just don't.
As a physician, I know how important it is for people to have access to health care, and we know that's not happening in Gaza. They've bombed the hospitals, they've attacked ambulances, people are starving. We need to address the humanitarian crisis that is in Gaza. We need to have peace. We need to have peace in that very challenged area. I do agree that that it's not one that's imposed by us, right? It's one where we have to, as an honest broker, engage both sides. I would also agree that in terms of setting the moral standard, unfortunately, under the Trump administration, we are not setting the kind of moral standard that allows us to then call on other countries, including Israel, to do the right thing. In fact, Israel has a problem with Netanyahu, and we have a problem with Donald Trump and his folks. And so, but by flipping the House, I think the Democrats have a more important role in basically holding not only Trump administration accountable, but also Israel accountable for addressing the human rights violations of the Palestinian people. Thank you.
All right, we'll do one final question. We'll start with Martha. How will you course correct the authoritarian turn in America? Please provide specifics.
What we need to do is impeach Trump. That's what we need to do. And the administration, get them out of office, because these executive orders that are coming down are illegal. But what we can do is continue to fight them and also address this in the Supreme Court. Those actions that are being reinforced as we fight, and then they take this horrible action where the Supreme Court is reversing what we're trying to fight for, what is legally, rightfully correct. And so looking at addressing and impeaching any Supreme Court justice, such as Clarence, is what we need to do to get this corrected. And so I want to be able to see us being able to get our rights and preventing ICE from the raids, defunding the ICE programs that are happening illegally today, holding those ICE individuals accountable, bringing them to justice, and also, those that are, causing in the administration, inflicting harm in their administrative actions.
So I couldn't agree with Mayor Guerrero more about the need to hold ICE accountable. I go a step further. Usually I say that we should dismantle ICE wholesale. I don't think any immigration agent of any kind should carry anything more lethal than a clipboard. We know that ICE is basically the personal shock army of Donald Trump and his administration at this point. We see how they're acting in Minneapolis. We see how they are likely to act in California when their gaze turns on us again, because it will. Court cases are fine, impeachment of the president is fine, but of course we have the Supreme Court saying he's immune for official acts, and so I look forward to putting the pressure on everyone in the chain of command. That means Kristi Noem, it means Pete Hegseth, those people are not immune. We can haul them up for impeachment hearings, we can use the power of Congress, constitutionally outlined, to arrest people who hold us in contempt and refuse to testify. We can shut off the power of their agencies. We can make sure that their staff are not getting paid, that ICE is lined out of the federal budget. There are all kinds of things we can do to make the Republicans play ball and work inside the law.
One thing we've learned from the Trump administration is they can do bad things fast. We need to take that same energy when we are in power to do good things fast. And it's a both and, right? We can impeach Pam Bondi for all of the things she's done with our DOJ. We can impeach Kristi Noem, but we can also make sure we get rid of the defund of Planned Parenthood and protect choice. We could also extend the ACA tax credits. We also can make sure we're protecting Social Security and Medicaid. We have to be able to do both and. So we hold these people accountable, but we also get back to governing and making it work for the American people. And we need to use the power of the purse strings. Congress holds the power of the purse strings. So like my good friend Tyler has said, let's take ICE money and put it towards healthcare. Let's take DOJ money if they're not willing to follow the Constitution. It's not just a document that's for play. We need to show them we're serious. And so if they can get through Project 2025 with almost, 50% of the things that are bad, we need to take that same energy, hold them accountable, and have results for working families.
Actually, there was an article in NPR called Congress Comatose, right? Called Congress Comatose. In fact, it was about people leaving Congress, including Republicans. It's time for Congress to stand up to its constitutional duties.
Yeah.
Its constitutional duties include, by the way, revenue. Why is Donald Trump raising taxes, called tariffs, without Congress? Why is Donald Trump sending troops to Venezuela and other places without congressional authority? Congress needs to stand up and exert its constitutional role. And that also includes oversight hearings. It also includes other actions as well, including power of the purse. Certainly, I and Congress will demand our leadership that the Congress stands up and exercise constitutional duty, challenge the courts to prevent Congress from doing that. It's in the Constitution, it's written there. We need to fight. One thing I do want to comment on is that we got to be sure when we fight Donald Trump, we win. We've impeached him twice, he got away with it. His followers like that. We've got to be sure we close the deal and deliver for Democrats. Thank you.
We need to get back to democracy, and we need to get back to basics. What do I mean by that? Let's talk about getting back to democracy. Donald Trump has immunity because the Supreme Court in his back pocket gave him that immunity, but not the people below him. So let's start by going after each and every one of them. I would be on the Oversight Committee seeking to impeach, seeking to subpoena, seeking to investigate, and shining the bright light of sunshine and on them, to show what they are doing. Then what we need to do is we need to go after their purse strings. We need to go after and defund essentially the tentacles of Donald Trump himself. And then what we need to do beyond that is get back to basics. Because what people also care about, we can do this at the same time. Because when you go after democracy, one of the ways you do that is by going after and oppressing people. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we can help people put food on the table, with safe neighborhoods and schools. We need to get back to basics and the kitchen table issues, and at the same time, take the fight from the community, from the courtroom to Congress, and I can do that. Thank you.
Can we get one more round of applause for all the candidates?